Hello everybody, this is Tip Top MTG here today with another Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, I am going to be going over all of those spoilers for Commander Legends that have come out today, today being November 2nd. So I'm going to break down every card, tell you what I think about it, whether it's a reprint or not. Obviously I'm going to spend less time on the reprints. I'm going to talk especially about the commanders and what kind of decks they can go in and what cards work well with them. So these have been going on since the beginning of spoilers and will continue until the end. And then after that, I'm going to be doing a bunch of awesome videos relating to like the new commanders, talking about the most expensive cards, so you guys won't want to miss that, so make sure you hit the subscribe button. But let's just move right into this. Starting off, we have Generous Gift. This is a 3-cost white instant, and it says destroy target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 green elephant creature token. So this was a reprint. This is a reprint from Modern Horizons, and it's such a powerful card. For 3 mana, you can destroy anything: a land, a creature, an enchantment, an artifact, a planeswalker, literally anything that doesn't have indestructible can be destroyed with this. Of course, this is kind of a functional reprint of, except in a different color, of Beast Within. It was first printed in Modern Horizons, and it has kind of become a commander staple, so it's good to see it included here, especially in the extended art treatment. Next we have Faith's Fetters. This is a reprint actually from a couple sets, but it was last printed in Core Set 2021, and it's a 4-cost white enchantment aura, and it says enchant permanent. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life, and then enchanted permanent can't attack, block, and its activated abilities can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. So it's kind of like a pacifism, but it also gets rid of abilities, and the biggest difference here is that it can actually go on planeswalkers, and this is actually a pretty good effect in Commander because, yes, you can exile or kill your opponent's commanders, but then they can be recast. But if you strip them of their abilities and make it so they can't attack or block, they're kind of just sitting there, and unless they have a way of killing it with either their own kill spell or sacrificing it, you can kind of just disable their commander. And this also works on planeswalker commanders, so yeah, this is a pretty good card. Obviously it already exists, so it's not going to change anything about commander, but in a limited environment, this card will be very good. Next we have Austere Command. It's a 6-cost white sorcery, and it says choose 2. So you're either going to destroy all artifacts, destroy all enchantments, destroy all creatures with CMC 3 or less, or destroy all creatures with CMC 4 or greater. So you can do 2 of them. You can destroy all artifacts and all creatures with CMC 4 or greater. So maybe you're playing a token deck, so you can just destroy all the big creatures and destroy all the enchantments, I don't know, and then your creatures are left alive and your artifacts are fine as well. You can also just, if you need to, wipe all creatures, wipe all artifacts and enchantments. It's just such a versatile board wipe. It's actually a reprint from Double Masters, which I've noticed there's a lot of, and it's almost like these were designed at different times and not intended to be released so close to each other. But yeah, it's definitely one of those cards that I would say fits in a lot of my decks. I mean, yes, I could maybe pay 4 and play like God's Wrath, but this, the 2 extra mana really isn't that much in Commander, especially if you're not just in mono white. But I think the versatility of being able to hit artifacts and enchantments is just so powerful. And of course, this is a $5.50 card, which isn't awful. Of course, the price is probably going to go down below $4. So that's not amazing, but of course, I really don't see Commander Legends being opened for value, unlike something like Double Masters. I see it being more opened for either draft or just to get your hands on some very awesome Commander cards. So far, there's only a few cards in here that I've seen that I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't want to play that in a Commander deck, and it's generally in the common slot. Next we have Deranged Assistant. It's a 2-cost blue creature, human wizard, 1/1, and it has the ability tap, mill a card, add colorless mana. So yeah, I didn't know this card actually existed, but it's very interesting. It's kind of blue ramp. It's also self-mill, so if you're in either self-mill or wizards or like wanting to ramp in just blue, this is a pretty good card. I mean, yes, the mill a card is a thing. You may need to worry about it, but generally you're not going to need to, and it's just kind of a little bonus on there. So yeah, it's a common. It's going to be really cheap, so it'll be exciting to see if more people start playing this now that it'll become more accessible. Next we have Flood of Recollection. It's a 2-cost blue sorcery, and it says return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand and then exile it. So it kind of just lets you get something back. There's lots of effects like this in Commander, including this exact card, but something that's kind of interesting is that it's now being printed at common. It was an uncommon in Rivals of Ixalan, but now it's a common, so I don't know, maybe this will be something that Pauper players will be excited to see, and so I think that is where the real value in this card may actually come from. Next, we have Scholar of the Ages. We have a 7-cost blue creature. It's a 3/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you return up to 2 instants and sorceries from your graveyard to your hand. Very expensive, not something I'd really want to do with 7 mana. I mean, you could cast Ultimatums for 7 mana. Of course, the mana is much more restrictive in that, but the point is, like, for 7, you can do a lot more than just return 2 cards, but this is part of, I'm sure, a lot of infinite combos, so for that reason, I guess it's good to get more copies out there, although it is just an uncommon. Next we have Spark Harvest. It's a 1-cost black sorcery, and it says, as an additional cost to cast a spell, either sack a creature or pay 4, and then it says destroy target creature or planeswalker. So this is very, very similar to an older card that was, it's just pay 1 as an additional cost to cast this, sack a creature, destroy target creature. This is upgraded from that in the fact that you can choose to pay 4 mana. For instance, if you don't have a creature, like you're top decking and you pull this, or if you don't want to sacrifice a creature, and then it also has the choice of hitting a planeswalker. This is just generally pretty good because, your opponent's commander is probably going to be a creature or planeswalker, and so this kind of helps you take those out. Now, of course, it won't always be, and sometimes they'll have indestructible, but yeah, this is any kill spell is going to be good to pick up in the draft. Next, we have Ghastly Demise. It's a 1-cost black instant, and it says destroy target non-black creature if its toughness is less than or equal to the number of cards in your graveyard. So this is definitely going to want to go in a self-mill deck, but if you can throw it in there, it is a pretty efficient 1 mana, get to destroy a creature. Unfortunately, it says non-black in there, which means that, there may be, the biggest threat of the table may be a black card, and then you just really can't do anything about it. But yeah, it's a reprint from Odyssey, so it's good to see it like in a modern frame, and, maybe more people will get their hands on it because, Odyssey was such a long time ago. It'll be nice to see more people get their hands on it and maybe be able to play some more specific removal for their deck and not just the generic removal. Next, we have Crow of Dark Tidings. It's a 3-cost black creature zombie bird 2/1 with flying, and when it enters the battlefield or dies, mill 2 cards, and it was last reprinted in Jumpstart. Pretty generic, but if you're playing a self-mill deck, it's a creature that's gonna mill you, and then when it dies, mill you more. Pretty generic. Next, we have Eyeblight Massacre. It's a 4-cost black sorcery, and it says non-elf creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. So if you're playing an elf deck, this is pretty good because, in effect, that would just give -2/-2 is not amazing because your elves are probably going to be in that range, and there's a lot of things that won't be. But this kind of gets around that. If you're playing a lot of, 3/3s maybe, or 3 toughness creatures, this could also be interesting. But yeah, it's only been printed once, so it's good to have it be a reprint. There are a lot of reprints today. Next, we have Falthis Shadowcat Familiar. So I believe this is the 2nd or 3rd familiar we've seen. It's a 3-cost black legendary creature Nightmare Cat 2/2, and it says commanders you control have Menace and Death Touch. That is a nasty combination because you're going to kind of force them to block with 2 creatures, and then you're going to kill both of them, and so you're kind of 2-for-1ing them. Of course, if you put this with like another commander that's going to, care about attacking or blocking or something, it's going to work pretty well. And so I think because of that, this will be a pretty good just like secondary commander. Yeah. And of course it has partner. Next, we have Elvish Dreadlord. It's a 5-cost black creature zombie elf 3/3, and it has Death Touch, which is always a nice bonus. And then whenever it dies, non-elf creatures get -3/-3 until end of turn. So it's very similar to the previous card, except it's -3/-3, and it's when this thing dies. So you kind of play this, and your opponent, it kind of stops your opponent from swinging. Also, the Death Touch means that like if they don't want to swing anyway, so it kind of halts combat. And then it has Encore for 7, and if that happens, essentially you're going to make, if you're playing a 4-player game, you're going to make 3 copies of him. Then at your end step, they're all going to die, which means that all creatures are going to get -9/-9 that are non-elves, I should say, are going to get -9/-9 until end of turn. So yeah, a pretty good card. I feel like in a black-green kind of elf deck, they're generally going to generate a lot of mana, so this is probably really easy to do. And yeah, I really like it. Next, we have Necrotic Hex. It's a 7-cost black sorcery, and when it says each player sacrifices 6 creatures, that includes you, but then you create 6 tapped 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So this is probably going to be a board wipe unless someone has a giant army, which you could. And then you kind of get to be left with 12 power on the board, which I think really makes up for it. But the issue is, if your opponents do have like 7 creatures, they get to save their best. I would rather just kill everything. I believe there are cards close to that price range that is kill everything, and then, I mean, at least in white, I know you can get like an XX Phyrexian Rebirth thing. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this card, although if I didn't have another card to throw into the deck, I could definitely see me playing this as a board wipe. Next, also in a deck that cares about when people sacrifice things, that's also pretty good. Next, we have Nightshade Harvester. It's a 4-cost black creature elf shaman 2/2, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, that player loses 1 life, and you put a counter on this creature. So this is going to disincentivize, I should say, your opponent from dumping in a bunch of lands. 1 damage, though, isn't that amazing. Although it could get to the end of the game, they're down to 5 life, they really can't play lands, and this creature is getting bigger. So yeah, not a huge fan of this. If it cost 3, I would say, yeah, this is a pretty playable card, but I just honestly don't see it. I mean, I would say it's a good sideboard card, but that's not a thing in Commander. So I guess maybe depending on the meta, and I don't really know the CEDH meta, so yeah. And by the way, CEDH generally doesn't run using lands, they run using mana rocks. So I don't really even see that being good there. It's also too expensive. So yeah, not seeing where this is meant to go, but if you have an interesting use for it, let me know in the comments down below. Next, we have a Flamekin Herald. It's a 3-cost red creature elemental wizard 3/2, and it says commander spells you control have cascade. So you're going to cast your commander, you're going to cascade. Now, you might say, well, this is kind of, meh, because if you draw this after you've played your commanders, it doesn't do much. And yes, that's true, but you're generally going to probably cast your commander at least 1 more time. Yeah, if you're running a cascade deck, I could totally see people playing this, but it's kind of narrow in usage. I mean, that issue of, oh, I pulled it after I played my commanders, you better either have a way to bounce them or hope they get killed, I guess. I'm not sure. This is kind of weird. Next, we have Kodamas Reach. It's a 3-cost green sorcery arcane, and it says search your library for up to 2 basic lands, reveal those cards, put 1 into the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, then shuffle your library. So it's Cultivate, which is currently in standard, but it has the arcane type. Essentially, you can run this and Cultivate in the same deck, and that's the only reason they're both a thing. Yeah. Next, we have Elvish Visionary. It's a 2-cost green creature elf shaman 1/1, and when it ETBs, draw a card. Very good in elf ball because it's going to kind of just replace itself. It kind of thins your deck, and it's upping the number of elves you have. I don't know how powerful it necessarily is, but in something like Historic, which I know is very different from Commander, this card sees a pretty big impact in like elf decks. So I've seen that even though it looks very deceptively, not that amazing, it is very easy to abuse or just like use to thin your deck or flicker or something. And so don't overlook this card. Next, we have Wildheart Invoker. It's a 4-cost green creature elf shaman. It's a 4/3, and you can pay H, and it gets +5 target creature gets +5/+5 and gains trample until end of turn. That's a good ability, but it costs way too much. I mean, if you're late in the game in a limited environment, sure, maybe, but like 8 mana just for +5/+5 and trample. Yes, it's repeatable, so I guess infinite mana equals infinite damage, but yikes. Next, we have Reclamation Sage. It's a 3-cost green creature elf shaman, and when it enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. It's a 2/1. In elf decks, this is pretty good. It was last reprinted in Double Masters. It's pretty good because, well, in an elf deck, you still need to run removal, but you also just want to throw out as many elves as possible. Of course, this card already exists, which is part of the issue with today's spoilers. They're like all reprints. But yeah, pretty good. There's clearly a theme of elves in black and green, and we're going to see actually a commander coming up that cares about that. And I know I saw someone in the comments who really wanted a black and green commander, and they were like, oh, the other one was kind of lame. I might just do a black, commander with partner with a green one and just do elves like that. So you're going to see one coming up here very soon. Either way, we have Tech Salvager Splicer. It's a 5-cost green legendary creature human artificer 1/1, and when it enters the battlefield, create a 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature token. So you get a 4-power kind of creation for 5 mana, so they better have some other ability, although I guess 4 power among 2 creatures isn't awful. And then whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a counter on Tech and a counter on each golem you control, and that's a +1/+1 counter. So yeah, you're gonna basically put this in a golem deck, and it has partner, and I believe there was a golem as a partner. So yeah, I'm sure there's a very specific partner you're going to want to pair this up with, but in a golem kind of tribal deck, this is pretty good, although I really wouldn't see putting that in green. I would say more blue or white, but if you have a good partner for it, I could definitely see this being a thing. Next we have Sifter Worm. This is a reprint from Hour of Devastation, and it's a 7-cost 7/7 with trample, and when it ETBs, scry 3, then reveal the top card of your library. You gain life equal to that card's CMC. What I think works well about this card, and I'm not saying it's a good card, is that this card is very expensive, so you're probably putting it in a deck that runs expensive things, which means that ability to scry and gain life is pretty big, but if the whole big ability of this worm is you get to gain 7 life, why aren't you playing, like, Palaka Worm? That's not a good card, so I'm not a huge fan of this card. Next, we have Reshape the Earth. Now, this is a card I'm a fan of, or at least it's a powerful card. Maybe not a fan of is the right word, but Reshape the Earth, it's a 9-cost green sorcery, Mythic, part of the cycle of 9-cost, really powerful but really expensive cards. The issue is, well, this is in green, which means it doesn't actually cost 9, it costs closer to 5 or 6. And it says, search your library for up to 10 land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. And that is not basics. So, where are people saying this is going to go? They're saying this is going to go in Golos, Gates, because there's a Gate deck using Maze's End, right? You play Golos, get out Maze's End, next turn, cast Reshape the Earth, getting all 10 Gates out onto the battlefield, and then just win instantly with Maze's End. Yeah, pretty insane, like, combo, and even if you're ignoring that, 10 landfall triggers, 10 just extra mana is insane, and of course it is land, so you can go get your combo pieces, you can go get your 2020 Merit Lage, you can get your, Thespian Stages, and your Urborg, and all of that, so yeah, this is a pretty insane card, and I think it's probably the most powerful 9/1 we've seen, and it's also the easiest one to cast because of the color it's in, and it's just kind of typical green getting the best of the cards. Next we have the Abomination of La Noir. It's a 3-cost black and green legendary creature, elf horror, star, and its power and toughness are equal to the number of elves you control plus the number of elves in your graveyard. And, we've seen green and black elves in this set, and, the theme has basically been dying. When things die, do X. When things do this, do that. And a lot of it ends up being with elves in the graveyard. And a lot of, elf commanders really don't like that. They want their elves on the battlefield. But this one has the advantage of saying, hey, I'm fine if my elves are in the graveyard. I also get boosted for that. Now, I wish it did a little bit more, but in combination with some other cards, I'm sure you could do something very cool with this. Next, we have Emoti, Celebrant of Bounty. It's a 5-cost green and blue legendary creature Naga Druid. It has Cascade, so you're going to get a 4 or less drop. It's a 3/1, and it says spells you cast with CMC costs 6 or greater have Cascade. And what's interesting about that is that if you play a 10-cost and Cascade into a 9-drop, now that 9-drop has gained Cascade, which means you can Cascade into an 8/7/6, and then after 6 it falls down, but maybe you Cascade into an Imoni, but I guess he's already on the battlefield. I don't know. Kind of weird, but it is definitely cool and powerful, and I don't really see people maybe building decks around it, but I can definitely see it fitting in decks. Next, we have Arumi of the Dead Tide. It's a 3-cost blue and black legendary creature merfolk wizard 1/4, and it says tap, exile cards from your graveyard equal to the number of opponents you have. Target creature card in your graveyard gains encore until end of turn. The encore cost is equal to its mana cost. So you can kind of it's kind of giving escape from Theros Beyond Death to one creature every turn, except it's encore, and this lets you kind of create 3 copies of anything. So anything with a good ETB, even things that are as simple as I don't know, like just very simple ETBs, draw a card. Elvish Visionary, which can't fit in this deck, but whatever. It ETBs, draws you a card, you give it, you tap, exile 3 cards from your graveyard, and then pay 1 in a green, and boom, you get to draw 3 cards, swing with a bunch of 1/1s, you maybe get some death triggers too. Pretty awesome. I think this is one of the better uncommon legendaries. Next we have Jury, Master of the Revu. It's a black and a red for a legendary creature, Human Shaman, and it says whenever you sack a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on Jury, and whenever it dies, it deals power equal to its, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. Very generic, very boring. I don't really have much to say about it. We have this effect over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. I don't know if we've ever had it as a commander, but I feel like I've seen this text on cards millions of times before, so I'm really just going to move on. Next, we have a Lathal, the Bounteeless Dawn. It's a 4-cost green and white legendary creature unicorn 2/2 with lifelink, and it says at the beginning of each end step, if you gained a life this turn, distribute up to that many +1/+1 counters among any number of other target creatures. So if you gain 10 life at your end step, you distribute 10 counters among creatures you control, which is very powerful when this has lifelink. So you gain 10 life, put 10 counters on it, next turn swing for 12, put 12 counters on things. Pretty good. The issue is we have a commander, I believe, that's very similar to this, but it just instantly puts the counters on. Or if it's not a commander, it's a card. This, you have to make it to the end step. So if you gain like 25 life, someone can kill Lathal in response, and then you won't get to put counters. So that's the only like real downside of this. Otherwise, I think this is a really interesting card, and I don't know how much Selesnya like life gain decks we really have. Like obviously, Selesnya is probably going to be the best 2-color combination at life gain, besides maybe Orzhov. But you know, this is one of the more interesting ones in my opinion. Even though we have had cards like it, I actually think I might build around it. And you know, unicorns and like horses and stuff, we've seen a lot of life gain with those. So I wonder if you could also do something with that creature type. Next we have Neverrowels Urborg Tyrant. It's a 6-cost Esper, legendary creature, zombie wizard 3/6, and it has hexproof from artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So basically, permanents entering the battlefield or activating abilities can't really target him. And then whenever he enters the battlefield, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token for each creature that died this turn. And then whenever it dies, you may pay 1. When you do, destroy all artifact creatures and enchantment. So this is a reference to Neverrowels Disc, which allows you to pay 1, tap, sack it to destroy all artifacts, enchantments, and creatures. And, you know, it's obviously named after him. But he also has the ability to, you know, he comes in with the 2/2, I guess, which means you're getting 8 toughness for 6 mana, which is kind of interesting. And then he has that hexproof ability. Generally, you're probably playing this for the bottom ability, but the hexproof, I don't know, hexproof is really relying on your opponent to, you know, make that ability useful. And then the middle ability kind of just, it creates a 2/2 for each creature that died this turn. So, I mean, I guess it doesn't always come out with the 2/2, but you're probably only playing this when at least 1 creature's died. I don't know. For me, it's like, yeah, you might have 3 creatures die, you get to bring them back, so that's kind of cool, or at least get a creature for each of them. And if you can maybe loop something, you get something here. But if you're already looping things, you're probably already winning. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm kind of mixed on this card. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Is this a good card? I don't know. Next, we have Reihan, Last of Abzan. It's a 3-cost black and green legendary creature, human warrior 0/0. This is a reprint, part of the original partner cycle, and it enters the battlefield with 3 +1/+1 counters on it, and then whenever a creature you control dies or is put into the command zone, if it had 1 or more +1/+1 counters on it, you may put that many +1/+1 counters on target creature. So it kind of lets you just save your +1/+1 counters. And then it has partners, so you're going to partner this with something that cares about +1/+1 counters, which there are now a lot more of, so I expect this price to actually probably go up even from here, instead of going down like a lot of the other partners. Also, by the way, I know in the past I've said a lot of partners are going to go down, but there's a high chance actually a lot of the partners go up because they are, you know, a good combo is found with them. Next, we have a Karametra, God of Harvest. It's a 5-cost green and white legendary enchantment creature god. It's a 6/7. It's indestructible. It does the whole god thing where it's not a creature as long as you don't have CMC 7 or not CMC, Devotion 7 or less to white and green. But then it has the ability, whenever you cast a creature spell, you may search your library for a forest or plains card, put it on the battlefield, tap, and then shuffle your library. So just whenever you cast a creature, ramp. Very good. It has indestructible. It's a 6/7, so if you can get it to be a creature, it's a little bit more exposed, but it's a little bit more useful. Not my favorite commander, but I could definitely see playing it, and I could also see playing it in a deck as well. Next, we have Moss Diamond. So we've seen, I believe, now the rest of the cards in this cycle. They are all in the set. It ETBs taps and adds for green. I don't like the card. I've said this the past couple days, but it enters tapped, meh, and it only taps for 1 color. If it either didn't enter tapped or it didn't tap for just 1 color, I'd say this is fine, but this is clearly just here for limited. Next, we have Golem Artisan. It's a 5-cost artifact creature golem, 3/3, and you can pay 2, and target artifact gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and you can pay 2, and target artifact creature gains your choice of flying, trample, or haste until end of turn. So, this isn't awful. It's not necessarily what I want to be doing with my mana, but if you have a ton of mana, maybe, and you have nothing else to do with it, you know, give something flying and +3/+3, you might be able to do something interesting with that, but you definitely need to be running maybe like a mono colorless deck to get this really going. Next, we have Meteor Golem. It's a 7-cost 3/3, and when it ETBs, destroy target non-land permanent. It's actually pretty good. It's not an amazing card. I would much rather be doing other things for 7 mana, but you kind of give red, for instance, access to destroy enchantments, and you kind of are able to really destroy anything. Blue can just kind of come down and destroy something, and in some blue decks, it's really good because you can, like, flicker it, and then you get some cool effects where you get to, like, keep killing things. There's a lot of things you can do with it. It's not an expensive card, though, so it really didn't need a reprint. It's very clearly here for the limited environment. Then next we have Neverrowels Disc. It's a 4-cost artifact, and it ETB's tapped, and then you can pay 1, tap, and to destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Sorry. What I find kind of interesting, and I just realized it about the card, the only reason this disc actually dies is because it destroys all artifacts. If you give this indestructible, for instance, this thing just can keep doing this every turn, and that's something I kind of now want to do. Is there a commander that gives an artifact indestructible or gives artifacts you control indestructible? I don't know. We'll have to see. Either way, this is a pretty good card, especially in any deck that's going to loop it, bring it back to the battlefield, and then keep doing it all over and over and over again, making sure that no one gets to keep anything on the board. It's also just a decent board wipe that can go in any color. For instance, blue has access to this essentially 5-cost board wipe that destroys artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So that's part of what makes it so good. Then we have Commander's Plate. It's a 1-cost artifact equipment, and it says each equipped creature gets +3/+3 and has protection from each color that's not in your commander's color identity. So if you're playing like a mono colorless deck, like a Ulamog or a, I don't know, some colorless creature, your creature has protection from Wooburg, which is pretty cool. But if you're playing this in a Wooburg deck, it has protection from nothing. If you're playing this in a mono-color deck, I would say this is still pretty good. And even in a 2-color deck, I could see this being interesting. It does have equip to commander for 3 and equip 5. If it was 1 less on each of those, I would say this is a good card to play, but I think it's a bit too expensive. It's too hard to move around, so you might put this on your commander and maybe you'll get lucky and it'll have protection from everything, essentially, but not a big fan of the card. Although, actually, well, I'm saying that, it's also just another Lightning Greave. So I think this card is going to be deceptively good, now thinking about it a little bit more. So let me know what you guys think about all of these cards in the comments down below. Again, if you want to see more awesome Commander Legends content, hit that subscribe button, because I'm going to be doing that for like the next 2 or 3 weeks. And then, you know, back to more regular MTG Arena content. Actually, Kaladesh Remastered is coming out soon, so I'll be doing spoilers for that too. So just lots of awesome stuff's coming up in Magic, so hit that subscribe button to stay notified. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and leave your comments on all your favorite cards in the comments down below. I will see you in the next one. Bye.